Okay, good evening, Rabbi. We're continuing our Shiurim on Sefer Shemos. Actually, tonight is the last Shiur on Sefer Shemos, which were dedicated by the Zakheim Mishpacha, by Dr. Zakheim, Lila Nishma Shlomo Eliezer ben Rabbi Yaakov Zakheim, Rivka Bas Tuvi Halevi, Rav Dov ben Rakib Tzia Koyen, and we thank the Yom Tobian family of Great Neck for dedicating the Shiurim of Chodesh Adar, memory of Miriam Bas Rachel, whose 12th yahrzeit is Tes Zayin Adar. Tonight's Shiur is sponsored by my dear friend Rabbi Sisma V'Rayasai as a Hakar Satov and a Mazel Tov for their new baby girl, Tizku Legadla, L'Torah, L'Ven Torah, L'Chuppah, L'Masim Tovim. Okay, we have a very special Shiur tonight. We're going to examine a topic that we've touched on the perimeter of and we never spoke about before. We know that in Judaism, the number 10 is a very significant number. Of course, Hashem created the world with 10 statements, and there are 10 Makkos. Over the years, we've had many Shiurim establishing the connection between the 10 statements with which Hashem created the world and the 10 Makkos. Oh, thank you, Reb Sender, for reminding me to mark at the Haggadahs. I would have forgot if he hadn't reminded me. But first of all, Reb Sender told me that he marked up his Haggadah. In the Haggadah, we speak about the connections between the 10 statements with which Hashem created the world and the 10 Makkos. Also, this year you have 4 languages that you could say the Haggadah in. You could Lashon HaKodesh. Now, this is not on the Haggadah. Be'ez Hashem, one day, B'siyata Shmaya in Lashon HaKodesh. This is on Chodesh Nisan, Pesach, and the Haggadah, Maggid Harakiah on Pesach. Then you have, published by ArtScroll in English, on the Haggadah. Okay? Now, if your Haggadah is getting a little stale and you need to juice it up a little bit, so then you could get the French Haggadah, the edition Julien Nissim, the French edition of the Haggadah. And you could read the same Divrei Torah in French, but when you read it in French and you harv on it, you'll remember it better. Let's say in the English Haggadah, it says Rav Shimon Schwab, spelled S-H-I-M-O-N. How do you spell Shimon in French? Yeah? C-H-I-M-O-N. So now you've chazered it, but you have a chidush, so how could you forget such a thing? Nuas dizzy gonos, yeah, it's very interesting. Now, in English, the number sign, how do you write number? You have 2 lines down, 2 lines across. In French, it's like a little circle. You knew that, yeah? How do you know that?
I took French in the college.
Really? Okay. And how? So then,
there you go.
So here, okay, hand it to him. Okay. Actually, I'm not going to say it. Fine. I'll tell you after. It's actually pretty good also. But remind me after. I met someone who spoke. Okay, I'll tell you later. Okay. Then you have the Spanish edition, Edition Isaac Zakai, available. They're all available for this Pesach. You could get the Hebrew Sefer in better Sfarim stores. Actually, I was in Z. Berman's and a guy was picking up the Haggadah. So the guy said to me, "Oh, I guess this is a better Sfarim store." I said, yeah. Okay, here we go. So we know we've spoken over the years about the connection between the 10 Makkos and the 10 statements with which Hashem created the world. And we explained how many of the Makkos are really reiterations of the statements with which Hashem created the world. Recently, we focused on how Makas Choshech was a reiteration of what? Vayomer Elokim Yehiar. Very good. In the past, we've explained how Barad corresponds to the Rakiah. The Rakiah is a Shumayim, Barad is a Shumayim. But there's another 10 in Judaism, and that is the Asaras HaDibros, the 10 Commandments. Do they play a role in this? Is it only the 10 statements with which Hashem created the world that somehow was reiterated and affirmed with the 10 Makkos? Or do the 10 Commandments also play a role in this progression? In other words, are there really not 2 10s, but 3 10s? And in fact, take a look at number 2. The Sefer Haggadah Shel Pesach Maaseh Hashem of one of the Kadmonim, Rabbi Eliezer Ashkenazi. He says that there are exactly 10 Makkos, not less and not more. Why? Because the world was created with 10 statements. Why did God create the world with 10 statements? Why not 9? Why not 11? Because why did Hashem create the world? He created the world for the Torah. The world was created for the Aseres HaDibros. So if the world was created for the 10 commandments, He created the world with 10 statements. So the 10 statements created the world for the sake of the 10 Dibros. The Amiros for the Dibros. Now pay attention to these words. Amira and Dibor means the same thing. The only thing is Amira is what? Lashon Raka, soft. Dibor is Lashon Kasha, is harsh. So the 10, think about why do we refer to the 10 statements with which Hashem created the world as Asara Ma'amaros and the 10 commandments as Asaras HaDibros? You know, why do we say Hashem created the world with soft statements and He gave the Torah with harsh statements? But comes the Masei Hashem, and He says, if Hashem created the world with 10 statements, because the world was created for the Torah, and therefore, if those who do the right thing in this world, they're literally fulfilling the Torah and upholding the whole world, so the Rishayim that are Mavatel, the Aseres HaDibros, they're the Mavatel, the whole world. So Paroi, who denied HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he's denying the point of the world. It's only right, he should be struck with how many Makkos? 10 Makkos. I mean, you could say it over, but what exactly does that mean? Just because Paroi was not fulfilling the will of Hashem, who created the world with 10 statements, therefore he should be struck with 10 Makkos. What is the progression? What is the connection? What is the deeper connection between the 10 statements with which Hashem created the world, the 10 Makkos, and the Aseres HaDibros? Okay, that's what we're going to talk about tonight. He could have. What we're going to try to discover, what is the connection between the 10 statements with which Hashem created the world, the 10 Makkos, and the Aseres HaDibros? By the way, the Zohar HaKadosh, look at number 4 in Parshas Yisro, says the 10 Amiros D'Oraisa incorporate all 613 mitzvahs. It incorporates above and below, Klala D'Chol Eser Amir and Debereshis. The 10 statements with which Hashem created the world, it incorporates the 10 statements of creation. Okay, how? What do the Aseres HaDibros have to do with the 10 statements with which Hashem created the world? Now, if you look in the Sfas Emes, says very cryptic words. He says, it is known that through the 10 Makkos, Nisbararu, it became sifted out and cleaned the 10 statements with which Hashem created the world, because the Rishayim destroyed the world that was created with 10 statements. Therefore, Klal Yisrael went down to Mitzrayim, and through the 10 Makkos, we received the Aseres HaDibros. Yeah, and say that in English now. You know, what does that mean? What is the relationship between the 10 statements with which Hashem created the world, the 10 Makkos, and the Aseres HaDibros? This is a subject we haven't really tapped into. In fact, Rabbi Yitzchak Hutner in the Mamari Pachad Yitzchak, Maimer Mem Zayin, he says, in Pachad Yitzchak, Maimer Mem Zayin, he says, God created the world with 10 statements, He gave the Torah with 10 commandments, and with 10 Makkos we left Mitzrayim. The sages tell us the 10 Makkos are the bridge between the 10 statements with which Hashem created the world and the 10 Makkos, and the 10 Dibros. Now, bridges have to be strong. Recently this year, actually this week, they discovered only 6 bridges in New York are in danger of immediately collapsing. Only 6 of them, right? But I guess the New York City Department of Transportation follows the rule of Chazaka. It's been up until now, so Chazaka says it's going to stay up. Okay.
I think there were only 6 in New York.
There are only 5, and 6 of them are in danger of collapsing.
We have to explain that, Joe.
Where? Yeah. By the way, if anyone doesn't understand the jokes, there's a Chazara shir after, just on the jokes. And that's the deepest shir of all. Okay, so we're trying to explain this progression. 10 statements with which Hashem created the world, 10 Makkos Aseret HaDibros. Comes the Zohar HaKadosh in Parshas Vayikra next week, because probably next week we'll talk about the Haggadah. So heaven forbid to forsake Vayikra, so we're going to prepare a little bit for Vayikra now. On the Pasuk in Nasai, Kapois Ahav Shtei Mesrei Milayos Ketayres Asara 10:10. Everybody always wanted to know why 10:10 wins. What's the lumdus of 10:10? We're about to discover the soid of 10:10. Says the Zohar HaKadosh, Asara 10:10, the spoon b'shekel HaKadosh. Says the Zohar. What is this 10:10? 10 for Masa Bereshis, 10 for Matan Torah. There are 10 statements with which Hashem created the world. There are 10 statements with Hashem gave us the Torah. Why? Because the world was created for the Torah, and whenever we engage in Torah, the world stands, and whenever we're nisbato from Torah, the world cannot exist. Let's analyze. What's the first statement with which Hashem gave us the Torah? Anoichi Hashem Elokecha. And what's the first statement of creation? Even though we always say the Gemara says Bereshis, the Zohar disagrees. The Zohar says the first statement is Vayomer Kem Yehi Or. And Emunah in Hashem is Or. Shenemer Hashem Oiri v'Yishi. Therefore, corresponding to Yehi Or is Anoichi Hashem Lekecha. Number two is, what's the second of the Aseret HaDibros? Don't have another God. That corresponds to Vayomer Lekem Yehi Rakiah. What is the Rakiah? Who is in the Rakiah? Says the Zohar HaKadosh, the Rakiah separates Bein Mayim L'Mayim, the upper waters and the lower waters. What are the upper waters? Says the Zohar, the upper waters are the Almighty God. Hashem is called Be'er Mayim Chayim. What are the lower waters? Mayim Achurim, Mechunasim, Sruchim, Metunafim. Disgusting, still, static, stationary water. That's Avodah Zarah. The higher waters is God. The lower waters is Avodah Zarah. And who interposes between God and despicable Avodah Zarah? Yisrael is called the Rakiah. Klal Yisrael is called the Rakiah. That corresponds to Lo yeh lecha Elohim achirim. Let's continue. Don't swear in God's name in vain. You know what that corresponds to? Let all the water gather to one place. Because when somebody takes God's name in vain, it's the opposite of achdus. It causes pirud. What's the fourth of the Aseret HaDibros? Shabbos. Shabbos corresponds to Tadshe Haaretz Desha. The proliferation of growth, of trees, of plants, of bushes, of grasses. Why? Because on Shabbos it's a day of blessing. It's a day that everything proliferates. It's a day that everything is blessed. So Shabbos corresponds to Tadshe Haaretz Desha. Then Kabed es avicha ve'asimecha. Honor your father and your mother. That corresponds to the luminaries in the heavens. Your father is the sun. You hear that, Meir? Your father is the sun. Your mother is the moon. Also, God is the sun. Also, Klal Yisrael is the moon. So honor your father and mother corresponds to there should be luminaries in the heavens.
Is that two different mitzvahs or one?
Honoring your father and your mother? It's a good shaila. Maybe when we speak about... It's a Gemara in Sanhedrin. Very good. Okay, next. Lo sirtzach, don't murder. What does that have to do with? Yishutzu hamayim sheretz nefesh chaya. It refers to the commandment, the statement of Hashem of the creation of fish. Like Haman said, fish, the big fish, swallows the little fish. That corresponds to lo sirtzach. Lo sinaf, don't commit adultery. That corresponds to toitzei haaretz nefesh chaya leminah. Because don't be disloyal to your wife and don't go to someone who's not your bas zug. You have to stick with your min. You have to stick with your min. Don't be like what it says by the Chaya. It says by the Chaya, Toitzi ha'aretz nefesh chaya lamina. The Chaya is warned to stay with her min. So if your wife calls you, you're a min, she's not calling you an apikairas. She's saying, you're my min, you're my zug. Whatever she says to you, it's really a compliment. You don't understand how. You might never understand how. But it's a compliment. She says, you're a min, it means you're my ben zug. So don't go to someone who's not your ben zug. Loi signoiv, don't steal. And what does that correspond to? The statement, I have given you the grass to eat. I've given you your food, don't steal someone else's. The next commandment, don't testify falsely. And then what does it say by Maaseh Bereshis? God says, I created man in our image, because someone who's created in the image of Hashem, like we're learning in the holy Chabura, our Tomer Devar Chabura, that a person's created in the image of Hashem. So therefore, our image testifies to the reality of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So if you testify falsely, you're not being true to the creation of man, that man is created in the image of Hashem. Then, finally, don't covet someone else's wife. That corresponds to the 10th statement of creation. It's not good for man to be alone. I'm going to make a helpmate opposite him. So corresponding to don't covet someone else's wife, that's the 10th commandment. That corresponds to a person, it's not good for man to be alone. I will make a Ezar Kenegdai. And this Zohar is cited by the Tzrar Hamar. So even though all the years we always learned that the 10 statements of creation were verified, were authenticated with the 10 Makkos. Now we're learning that the 10 statements with which Hashem created the world correspond to Aseres HaDibros. So now the only thing is we're missing a link. What's the link? So in past Shiurim we learned the 10 statements with which Hashem created the world corresponds to the Makkos. Now we're learning the 10 statements with Hashem created the world corresponds to the Aseres HaDibros. But now, could we explain how the 10 Makkos correspond to Aseres HaDibros? And even if we do, but what's the meaning behind this whole thing? 10 corresponds to 10, and this 10 corresponds to another 10. And maybe the Makkos correspond to the 10 guys in the minyan. And we have to figure out who's the Tzfardeya, who's the, So, I found in a Haggadah called Haggadah Shel Pesach Be'er Chaim Mordechai that indeed the 10 Makkos correspond to the Aseres HaDibros. What's the first Makkah? Dam, blood. What was struck in the blood? Why didn't Paro believe in Hashem? He was in denial.
He believed that
he was in denial. You get it? You don't get it? You'll attend the shir after. No, this joke is not in my Haggadah. The joke, the Nile. He was in the denial. Okay. Okay. Part of the shir is going to be why sometimes people do get the jokes and sometimes they don't get the jokes. Okay, Makas Dam struck the Nile. Why did it strike the Nile? The Nile was the god of the Egyptians. So because Paroi did not believe, Anoichi Hashem Elokecha, I am the Lord who took you out of Egypt, Hashem had to bring Makas Dam. Makas Dam showed that the Nile is not God. So Makas Dam, its counterpart, is Anoichi Hashem Elokecha. So the first Makkah corresponds to the first of the Aseres HaDibros. And he goes on to explain how each Makkah in order corresponds to Aseres HaDibros, and he has a complex presentation of how Tzfardeya. By the way, Tzfardeya is easy to explain. Tzfardeya. By the way, what's a frog's favorite section in Shulchan Aruch? Ribbis. Yeah. So. You got that one, okay? So,
how do you say it in French?
Even Avi's laughing on the Zoom, okay? So, no, I don't know if that counts. Fine. So frogs, what do frogs say? They don't say ribbit. No, you never. You videoed them. You got audio on what the frog says. You think it actually says that? Frog says, what does it say in Parak Shira? Baruch Shem Kvod Malchus Eli Elam Ba'ad. basically it testifies to the unity of Hashem. That corresponds to La Yelecha Elohim Acherim. Kinim, in order, this Sefer, this Haggadah, Be'er Chayim Mordechai, corresponds to the 10 Makkos in order. However, I want to share with you an amazing addition for this year. That, I saw Art Scroll came out with a new Haggadah. Obviously, you know which Haggadah to get, but I was curious when they came out with the Abi Chatzera Haggadah, because I had bought the Oiz V'Hadar Abi Chatzera Haggadah. So I figured, if it's in English, maybe I could understand it in the Lashon Kodesh. I looked at it last year and I got a few things from it, but I was reinvigorated, and somebody pointed me to an amazing presentation of the Abir Yaakov, Rabbi Yaakov Abi Chatzera. So the Abi Chatzera dynasty, it starts with Reb Shmuel Elbaz, who, by the way, is buried in Syria. He was a Talmud of Reb Chaim Vital. He's mentioned in Shem HaGdolim. He's the patriarch of the Abi Chatzera family. There are stories about him that he went on a flying carpet, and Abi Chatzera is the father of the mat. Okay. Many generations later was Rabbi Yaakov Abi Chatzera. Rabbi Yaakov Abi Chatzera was the Abir Yaakov. On the day the Chidah passed away, the Abir Yaakov was born. The Abir Yaakov had a son, Rav Masud. Rav Masud, I had a zocheh to be at his kever in Morocco. Rav Masud is the author of the following piyut. Ashir Afaer Lear HaMeir Rabbi Meir Balanes Rabbi Meir. You know that one?
No.
Yeah, you do. You need to, you shouldn't have said that. But it's a piyut. It's a piyut about Rabbi Meir Balanes. Anyway, his sons were Rabbi David Abi Chatzera, author of Reish V'Seifa, and the Baba Sali. So the Abir Yaakov, I wanted to go to his kever. We were going to go to his kever in Egypt, but after October 7th, we changed the destination. Okay, but in any event, the Abir Yaakov has a very beautiful presentation comparing the Eser Makkos to the Asaras Hadibros. But in his world, it goes backward, which, by the way, is very similar to the way we learned the Maral, that the 10 statements with which Hashem created the world correspond to the 10 Makkos backward. And let me try to share with you a little bit of his presentation, and then we need to crack the idea over here. Okay, this corresponds to this, and this corresponds to that, but what's the meaning of that? What's the meaning of the 10 statements with which Hashem created the world correspond to the 10 Makkos that correspond to the Asaras Hadibros? So the Abir Yaakov, the name of his Perush is Bigdei Hasarad, and he says like this: the 10 Makkos correspond to the Asaras Hadibros. The Mitzrayim wanted to be Mevatel Klal Yisrael from being Makabel the Asaras Hadibros, and Hashem created the world for the Torah. Paroi and his foolish cohorts, they're thinking they're going to destroy Klal Yisrael. They're going to destroy Klal Yisrael, there's not going to be Torah. If there's not going to be Torah, there's not going to be anything. So they're really working against themselves, but the Sitra Achra never thinks that way. So let's start. Says the Abir Yaakov, the Asaras Hadibros correspond to Eser Makkos, Milmata Lamala. Like this. What's the last of the 10 commandments? Loi Sachmaid. That corresponds to dam, blood. Now, question. You ready for this question? When a person is jealous and they covet something, what in them is coveting it? It's the blood. Is getting worked up, is getting heated up. I want that house. I want that car. I want that food. It's the blood that's getting heated up. I would add, the letters of Chemda have in it the word dam. I don't know why the Abir Yaakov doesn't say that. He says the letters after dam are hein. Dalid mem is hein nun. And the Gematria of hein nun plus the 2 koilim is Chemda. You want to stop these people who control their chemda, even if their blood boils? Hashem says, I'm going to turn your water into blood. Tzvardeya. Tzvardeya corresponds to don't testify falsely. First of all, Tzvardeya are oisiois paratz aid, a breach of testimony. Tzvardeya is a breach of testimony. And if you testify falsely, it shows you deny Hashem's hashgacha. And if you testify falsely, then you're a koifar. Like David HaMelech says that Balei Halashon say, we're going to allow our tongues to prevail. Who rules over us? They're a koifar be'ikar. Someone who just speaks at will, whatever they want, is a koifar be'ikar. Kinim. The Gematria of Kinim, first of all, Kinim corresponds to don't steal. The Gematria of Kinim is Geneva times 2. Because you think when you steal from somebody, you're just stealing from them, you're stealing from God also. You're a double robber. So Kinim is Gematria Geneva times 2. Now, when somebody steals, he thinks that he's causing the guy he's stealing from to lose, and he's gaining. It's the opposite. You steal from someone, God will pay that guy back, but it will bring you terrible curse. It's like kinim themselves. It's like lice themselves. They come to live on the host body. They think they're going to be a leech. They think they're going to get free room and board. No, they're just killing themselves because they have nowhere to go. They have no way to save themselves. So kinim are like robbers. Lois sinaf corresponds to aroiv. You know why? Because the gematria of aroiv with the 3 letters is erva. You knew that, I know. And when a person commits adultery, he's ma'arev zera im zera. He's mixing up the zera. So Abir Yaakov says aroiv corresponds to lois sinaf. Dever, death, corresponds to lois sirtzach. And that's pretty straightforward, right? Because usually when you kill somebody, they die. That's usually what happens. So lois sirtzach corresponds to dever. Okay. Shchin. You ready for shchin? Who knows what shchin are? What are shchin?
Nice.
Boils. Boils correspond to kibud avaim. We know that honoring your father and mother is compared to honoring Hashem. The word shchin, b'miloi, spelled shin yud nun, ches yud taf, yud vav daled, nun vav nun. The miloi is gematria kavod. And the chin, the Rashi Tevois, Shchin itself is Gematria Shavel Hashem, equal to Hashem. And the Soifei Tevois of the Miloi is Gematria Esavicha v'Yasimecha. So Shchin, now someone who doesn't honor their father and mother, they are so brazen-faced, and therefore they're punished with boils on their face. Shchin is also Gematria Eloikim, with Milo Yudin, which is Shin, and the Chin part is Chayim. So Shchin is Keneged Kibud Avaim. Barad of course is Shabbos. So you say, how? What do you mean how? You're really asking how? We know there's a rule. Zayin, Shin, Samach, Reish, and Sadi are interchangeable. So you just make the Reish a Shin. And there's also a rule, Dalet, Taf, Lamed, Nun, and Taf. Dalet, Tes, Lamed, Nun, and Taf are interchangeable. So you make the Dalet a Taf, and it spells out Shabbos. Bara, it spells out Shabbos. Now, what are you supposed to do on Shabbos? What are you supposed to do on Shabbos? Eat cholent?
Rest.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Okay, that's a fair answer. The main thing it says is Al Yetzei Ish Mimakoimai Bayom Hashvi. I want to tell you, I don't know if you ever heard this. The Yetzer Hara has invented 3 ways to make sure. You see, when you have the 3 Sudos on Shabbos, you're saved from Gehenna, you're saved from Chavlei Shel Mashiach, and Melchemes Gog Magog. So what does the Yetzer Hara do? He invented this new thing called Tayameh. Tayameh means you put a little morsel the size of a granule of salt on your tongue. Now Tayameh has become Kesudas Shlema B'Shaita. so therefore you don't eat Friday night. Then you eat a big kiddush, so you don't eat Shabbos day. And then Shalosh Seudos, the guy, all of a sudden, he starts keeping Zohars, that Divrei Torah is like Shalosh Seudos. So he doesn't know one word of the Zohar. This Zohar is out of context. And if you don't watch for Shalosh Seudos, you're not Yotzei. So the Yitzhar gets a guy not to eat any of the 3 meals on Shabbos. Why am I telling you this, even though I say this all the time? Because this week we took a Chabura to be Fahered on Yoredea by the Nitei Gavriel. And I tell you, you can watch, I put it up. I posted it. Nitei Gavriel is sitting there. And he says he doesn't know what's going on with this Tayameha. He says people think Tayameha is like if a woman wants to taste food and she tastes and she spits it out. I didn't pay him to say this. I didn't even feed it to him. Anyway, just I don't know. It was mamish siyata d'shmaya. Siyata d'shmaya.
Anyway, Goy and Mogai are not two people. Goy was the melech of Mogai.
But you still don't want to start up with him.
No, even if it's one guy.
I would say, you see, when it's 2 guys, you could wiggle out of each one, because you never know which one is better. But if it's 1 guy, it's mamish, it's worse. Arbe is b'miloi, Gematria, loisisa shem hashav. Choshech is don't have other gods. Because Avodah Zarah is like walking in darkness, I would say, because we said belief in Hashem is l'davar Hashem oiri, and Makkos b'chayros is keneged anoichi Hashem Elokecha. Just like Makkos b'chayros encapsulates all the Makkos, so too anoichi encapsulates all the Makkos. But friends, what in the world are we supposed to do with this? So we figured out how the 10 Makkos correspond to the 10 statements of creation. We saw the Maral in the past. We learned how the 10 statements of creation, the Zohar says, correspond to Aseres Hadibros. We learned, according to the Abir Yaakov, how the 10 Makkos correspond to Aseres Hadibros. 10 keneged 10, keneged 10. Wow. But what's the meaning of this? Why do we need these 3 series of 10? What is the deeper meaning that somehow the first 10 are Asara Mamoroi Shenever Olam. The last 10 are Aseres Hadibros, and there's a bridge, and this bridge better not be like New York bridges. We need a real bridge in between the Asara Mamoros and the Aseres Hadibros. So, I want to share with you tonight the amazing and very profound presentation of Rabbi Yitzchak Hutner in the Pachad Yitzchak, Maimer Mem Zayin. We have a lot of Chashuva Talmidim of Yeshiva Chaim Berlin over here. So I want to share with you the amazing presentation of Rabbi Hutner. We know on Pesach, even if you have a really good Haggadah and you want to read every single word, it's not going to work. We know that the night of the Seder, it has to be question and answer. Question and answer. If the kid is able to ask, great. Not able to ask, you need to feed him the question. At least get him to ask, Mazois. If he can't express it, you have to get ad pesachlai, question and answer. Is there any other mitzvah that has to be done in this format? Do we find the lulav? One guy gives it to the other guy. There's a noisein, there's a makabel. What's the concept that the mitzvahs the night of the Seder are derech, shaila, utshuva? Why the first 10 are called Asara Mamoros and the final 10 are called Aseres Hadibros? Says Rav Hutner. Take a look in chapter 136 in Tehillim. Anybody know how it starts? Haidu Hashem kitayv, kili adam chastai. Haidu. It ends off how? Noisein lechem l'chal basar kili alam chastai. When I was a kid in the Siddur, it didn't even write kili alam chastai. By some of the lines, the first part was too long, so they just said kuf lamed ches. Anyway, why are there 26 lines in this parak? Why are there 26 phrases in Haidu Hashem Kitov Kilam Chasdai? Chazal say because there are 26 generations that Hashem sustained before the Torah was given. There are 10 generations till Noach, another 10 till Avraham, and 6 to Matan Torah. Why did Hashem feed them breakfast? Why did He give them lunch? Why did He give them supper? They didn't deserve it. They didn't earn it. The answer is Noisein lechem l'chol basar. Why? Kili alam chasa. God fed them in His kindness. There are 26 stanzas. There are 26 generations that God fed in His kindness. So one second. And now when I eat breakfast, it's not in God's kindness? What's the difference about now? I also eat breakfast.
What about your K?
I eat a very healthy breakfast.
Does it fit in here? 26?
Only whole wheat bread. And even peanut butter. Only natural. Somebody took issue with our meat from last week. We were too pro meat. Seriously. So we have to temper it a little bit with some healthy advice. Okay? Yud Kei Vav Kei? That's another thing. The Shlach Kadosh brings it down. He even says the way to say Hoidul Hashem is first say 10 stanzas, and then say 5, and then 6, and then 5. We once spoke about that many years ago. But the Gemara says it's corresponding to the 26 generations that God fed in His kindness. I have one simple question. So why do we eat today? The answer is we eat today because we learn Torah. Because we deserve it. We deserve it fully. Rav Hutner says there are two eras in world history. There's called Chesed Vitor and Chesed Mishpat. Chesed Vitor is freebies, government handouts. Yeah. Communism, or certain parties in the United States government. Okay? And then there's something called capitalism, where Chesed Mishpat. Chesed Mishpat is its kindness, but you got to do something to earn it. For the first 26 generations, Ribbono Shel Olam handed out welfare to the world. From now on, there's no more Chesed Vitor. From now on, it's only Chesed Mishpat. You get the difference? For the first 26 generations, Hashem just sustained the world in His infinite, gracious kindness. From then on, Hashem sustained the world in kindness, but we had to do something to deserve it. Now, when you have...
Who did He sustain in these 26 generations?
Adam.
No, the 26 before.
Adam.
But before Adam,
Shais.
there were no generations before Adam.
No. Adam was the first man.
Right.
You want to know were there cavemen before him?
No. How did you just...
There are 26 generations before Matan Torah that God sustained in His kindness.
Wow.
Okay?
Okay, sorry.
Now, there is an idea, there were 974 generations before the world that the Torah existed, but we're not dealing with that right now. Okay, so if you have a system in place, we'll call it Chesed Vitor, where Hashem is just Mavater and He provides out of the kindness of His heart. And He wants to switch tracks to a new system, not of Chesed Vitor, but Chesed Mishpat. If you ever switch systems, you need to do two things. Thing one is, you need to stop system A. Thing two is, you need to start system B. You don't just go from A to B. You first stop system A. So if, let's say, the Ribbono Shel Olam was handing out government handouts for 26 generations, the first thing would be to close down this party of government. The next thing is, now we have to figure out a way how the recipients can deserve what they're getting. So, says Rav Hutner, until the Jewish people went down to Mitzrayim, the way the world worked was Chesed Vitor. God provided in His kindness in a way that mankind did not deserve. He was just Noisein lechem l'chol basar, kili olam chasdai. However, all of a sudden comes Egypt, and God starts whacking the Egyptians, meaning no more of this unlimited kindness. No more of this noisein lechem l'chol basar. The system is stopped. If you're wicked, I'm not feeding you anymore. The Makkos and Yetzias Mitzrayim put an end to what is called Chesed Vitor. And then at Kabbalas HaTorah, God started a new system where He showed the world how to deserve being sustained by the Chesed of Hashem. So the first era of history, Chesed Vitor. That was from the 10 statements with which Hashem created the world until the Makkos. The Makkos stopped that system, and the Torah began a new system of Chesed Mishpat. Now, says Rav Hutner, let's uncover the more profound difference between Amira and Dibor. We think Amira means, Rabbi Yitz, you're such a nice person. You come every week to the shir. You're the first one here. And you even laugh at my jokes. That's Amira. And we think Dibor is, not you, now I have to talk to somebody else in deep center field. You barely show up. You come after I finish my main point. You leave before I get to the punchline. And even while you're here, you're on the phone. You good for nothing. That's Dibor. No. That's not Amira and that's not Dibor. Amira doesn't mean soft. And Dibor doesn't mean harsh. You know what Amira means? Amira means soft because I am granting kindness even if you don't deserve it. I don't need anything out of you. I'm just giving to you. I'm just bestowing kindness on you. It doesn't matter to me what you do. The giver is the only thing that's relevant. The recipient's worthiness is irrelevant. That's Amira. But you know what Dibor means? Like in the Pasuk, Yadber Amim Tachtenu. You know what Dibor means? Dibor means to guide. Guide means there's a worthy recipient. You can't guide someone who's not doing anything. If a guy's lying down in bed and he's not moving, you can't guide them. You could just give them unlimited, unconditional kindness. But you can't do Dibor. Dibor means the recipient has to earn something on their own. So the 10 statements with which Hashem created the world, they weren't soft. God created the world, kuloi chesed, that the recipients didn't need to do anything to deserve what they were getting from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's why it's called Amira. Amira is soft kindness, because Hashem didn't ask or expect anything from the world. It was noisein lechem l'chol basar. Comes Kabbalas HaTorah. God says none of this. From now on, it's Aseres HaDibros. Now I'm going to be guiding you. Now I'll feed you, but you have to learn Torah and you have to follow the rules of the Torah, the 613 mitzvahs. So it's not soft versus harsh. It's unconditional kindness versus guiding you because you deserve it. Okay? So when did Amira start? When did the noisein lechem l'chol basar start? It started with the 10 Amiros, the Asara Ma'amaros Nivra Olam. And that was in effect for 2,447 years. In the year 2,448, a new system began, and that's Aseres HaDibros. Now God guides us. Now we have to deserve His kindness. Now we don't fully deserve it. It's still out of the kindness of His graciousness, but it's not unconditional. We have to earn it to some extent. So the question is, we have these Amiros that the world started off with. It switched with Dibor, it morphed, it transitioned to Dibor, but what shut off system one to start grooming the world into system 2, that were the Makkos, the 10 Makkos. The 10 Makkos said, no, none of this unconditional love. Just love them. That was good for the first era of history. Amira, Asara, Ma'amaros, Shenivra Olam, that was good until the 10 Makkos. So the Makkos were the bridge that brought the world from the Asara, Ma'amaros, Shenivra Olam to the Aseres HaDibros. The Asara, Ma'amaros were, Amira means, I'm just giving to you, irrespective of who you are. Dibor means guidance. Guidance means there's a recipient. The Makkos shut down System A and began to groom the world for System B. What is the mitzvah of the night of the Seder? Sipur? Sipur, huh? So what is this called? Haggadah. Sipur is soft. Haggadah is harsh. You got to do both. Because the night of the Seder is the transition between the Asar Ma'amaros Shenivra Olam to the Aseres HaDibros. The Aseres HaDibros is now, we look at who the recipient is. The Asara Ma'amaros Shenivra Olam, the recipient is irrelevant. The bridge between that is the Eser Makkos. So all of these various ideas that we've learned over the years and we've learned tonight, that the 10 statements of creation were verified by the 10 Makkos, that the 10 statements of creation were for the sake of the Aser Sadibros, that the 10 Makkos correspond to the Aser Sadibros. But what's the deeper meaning? Says Rav Hutner, their system A of Noisin Lechem L'chol Basar, their system B of Yad Ber Amim Tachtenu, and the Eser Makkos were the transition and the sturdy, firm bridge between the Asar Mamor Shenevra Olam and the Aseres Hadibros. And therefore, the night of the Seder is really a rebirth of the Jewish people, because it's a rebirth of the whole world. God is, so to speak, shutting down the system. He's putting an end to System A, and He's conditioning the world to prepare us to open up a new channel, and that is the Aseres Hadibros. I will add, just an amazing idea from the Sfas Emes, that just like there are 10 statements with which Hashem created the world, and there are 10 Makkos, and there are Aseres Hadibros, but even though there are Aseres Hadibros, how many mitzvahs are there? In the Torah, the Jewish people? 613. Even though there are 10 Makkos, but we know if you look at the various brisas in the Haggadah, you have, what do you have? You have 10 in Mitzrayim, and how many Al Hayam? According to the first opinion?
250.
According to the first opinion, Rabbi Yossi Aglili Omer, Eser Makkos, Velayam Laku Chamishim. At Chamishim. How many is that altogether? 60. Good. Rabbi Lezer says what? Each one was 4. So it comes out 40 in Mitzrayim, 200 Al HaYam. So we're up to how many? 60 and 240. 300. Unbelievable. Then Rabbi Akiva says 5. Each one was 5. So 50 in Mitzrayim, 250 Al HaYam. That's how many? 300 plus
600.
600.
We're up to 600. Plus the 10 Makkos, plus the Tzach Hadash V'Achav is 613. So just like the Sfas Emes says, there are 10 Adibros and 613 mitzvahs, there are also 10 Makkos, but 613 subsidiary Makkos. And there are 10 statements with which Hashem created the world. Now, your homework now is to try to discover and uncover the 613 subdivisions of the 10 statements with which Hashem created the world. Be'ez Hashem, next week we hope to continue on the Haggadah. Wishing everyone a wonderful night. Bracha v'atzlacha. Kol tov.
Didn't the Shvatim Mitzrayim